These are the complete answers to Module 1, Part 2 of Practice Test Number 1, the digital practice test from the SAT College Board website. Yeah, there's a digital, there's a paper. This is the digital version. Again, Module 1, Part 2. I'm going to go through each of these step by step. I'm going to try to give you some tips along the way, some little tricks and shortcuts to make your times a little bit faster. And this module 2, module 1, part 2, calculators are allowed. So let's get started. Oh, and there will be jumps below if you need to go to a specific question. Jumps will be in the description below to each question in this part. First one, what is 10% of 470? For percentages, anytime you need to do a percentage, you're going to change that percent into a decimal. In this case, 10% is the same as 0.10. So you multiply 470 times 0.10. You can do that on paper or in your calculator, and you are going to get 47. Because this is 10%, the other shortcut you can use anytime you're multiplying or saying what is 10% of something, you just need to take this decimal that's invisible in this case and move it in one spot. This works with any number. Just move that decimal in one spot and you'll have your answer. So here it is, B, 47. Number 2, which equation has the same solution as the given equation? We're starting with 4x plus 6 equals 18. And if we look at all of our choices, they all have 4x equal to something. So we want to get 4x by itself. To do that, we need to undo this adding of 6. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. That leaves 4x on the left side, and 18 minus 6 is 12. So the answer would be C, 4x equals 12. Number 3, the total cost in dollars to rent a surfboard, let me zoom in a little bit, consists of a $25 service fee and a $10 per hour rental fee. A person rents a surfboard for T hours and intends to spend a maximum of $75 to rent the surfboard. Which inequality represents the situation? Well, if you are spending a maximum of $75, you do not want to go over that, but you will be willing to spend that. So your amount over here, your combination of things that are going to add up to 75 must be less than or equal to 75, because you don't want to pay more than that. You want to pay less than that, but you are also willing to spend exactly $75, so it will be less than or equal to. And if we look at our multiple choices, all of them are using the less than or equal to, so we know we're on the right track. We want to add up the expenses. So it says a $25 service fee. That's a flat fee. That's not going to change no matter how many hours we rent this surfboard. So $25 is our first part. The variable part is how many hours will we be spending? We don't know. It is T hours. It is this unknown time. And how much do we have to pay per hour? $10 per hour. So if I were to spend 3 hours on this surfboard or rent this surfboard, it would be $10 times 3 hours, and I'd be paying that $25 fee. So there is our equation. 25 plus 10t is less than or equal to 75, which is B. Number 4, the function g is defined by g of x equals x squared plus 9. For which value of x is g of x equals 25? All this means is, what number do I need to put into this equation so that when I do this math, I get 25 as my answer? So a way to look at that is to say, what number can I put in here so when I put something in, I'm going to get 25? Now there's 2 ways you can do this. Since this is a multiple choice test, you can take each of these numbers and plug it in and see what you get. That is a viable strategy. The other way is to solve this. The easiest way to do this is to isolate first the x squared by subtracting 9 from both sides. You get x squared on the left, and on the right, 25 minus 9 is 16. Then to say what squared equals 16, or in other words, take the square root of both sides. That leaves x on the left. The square root of 16 is 4, so x is equal to 4. A is our answer. You can double check that by plugging it in. And yes, x or 4 squared is 16 plus 9 is 25. Woohoo, we've solved it. Number 5. Each face of a fair 14-sided die is labeled with a number from 1 through 14 with a different number appearing on each face. If the die is rolled one time, what is the probability of rolling a 2? This one's a pretty straightforward die problem. We don't have multiple rolls. We don't have, multiple faces with the same thing. We just have this 14-sided die. Don't worry, I'm not going to try to draw it because, I can draw, but not that well. And if I roll it once, how many 2s are there on this die? Where we've told there's a different number appearing on each face. So the 2 is only on there one time. There's one chance of getting 2. How many possible options are there? Well, we're told there are 14 sides. So the odds of it are how many options are we looking for out of how many total options? The one option of rolling a 2 is what we're looking for out of a total of 14 total options. So 1 out of 14, or A, is our answer. Number 6, a printer produces posters at a constant rate of 42 posters per minute. At what rate in posters per hour does the printer produce the posters? They just are testing that there are 60 minutes in an hour. So if a person produces 42 posters in 1 minute, how many are they going to produce in an hour? And so all you need to do then is multiply 42 times 60. You can do that writing it out or on your calculator, since calculators are permitted, and your answer is 2,520. Moving on to number 7, the function f is defined by the equation f of x equals 7x plus 2. What is the value of f of x when x equals 4? All they're asking you to do is to take this equation, replace this x with a 4. That's what they mean when they say, what is the value when x is 4? And then do this math. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2 is 30. 30 is our answer. Number 8, a teacher is creating an assignment worth 70 points. The assignment will consist of questions worth 1 point and questions worth 3 points. Which equation represents the situation where x represents the number of 1-point questions and y represents the number of 3-point questions? So altogether, however many 1-point questions I have and however many 3-point questions I have together, I'm going to have a plus there, it equals 70 points. So I know if I put these questions worth these numbers of points together, I'm going to get 70 total. I have an unknown number of 1-point questions and an unknown number of 3-point questions. These unknown number of 1-point questions are each worth 1 point. The unknown number of 3-point questions are each worth, you guessed it, 3 points. I don't have to write 1 times x. I can just write that as x. And I don't have to write the little dot in between. I can just write that as 3y. So that's my equation. X plus 3y equals 70. My answer is D. Number 9, right triangles LMN and PQR are similar, where L and M correspond to P and Q respectively. Angle M has a measure of 53. What is the measure of angle Q? Similar triangles, that's what they're testing on this question. Similar triangles are not identical. They are not congruent, but all their angles are the same. I know those are hideous triangles, but bear with me. Their angles are going to match. So corresponding angles, the angles that are lined up with each other, if you were to shrink it or enlarge one of these triangles to make them match identically, and then they would overlap, those corresponding bits, those angles are the same. So they're telling us right triangle LMN. A lot of these, they give you more information than you need. That's very common on the SAT. Like, honestly, you don't need to know that this is a right triangle, but there we are. They're telling us LMN and PQR are similar, where L and M correspond to P and Q. So I do this. I draw my little triangles. I go, okay, L and M correspond to P and Q. I make sure that L and P are in the same spots relative to each other on these two triangles, and M and Q are relative, are in the same spots relative to each other. Then they tell me that angle M has a measure of 53 degrees. Similar triangles, corresponding angles are the same. So angle M corresponds to angle Q. So if angle M is 53, angle Q is also 53 degrees. My answer is B. Y equals negative 3x and 4x plus y equals 15. These are two lines. The solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the value of x? This can be a little bit confusing when people go, it's x, y, so the x's and y's. They're just saying it's two numbers. They're just saying these are two lines. When you say solution to a system of equations where it's two lines, you're wanting to know where these two lines cross. That is your solution to the system of equations. Visually, that's what they're asking. When we're talking algebraically, we can do this pretty simply with substitution or elimination to solve systems of equations. In this case, because they already have a variable isolated as y equals negative 3x, I am going to use substitution. So for substitution, we take this y equals negative 3x, and then in my other equation, every time there's a y, I plug in a negative 3x. That's the easiest way. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of, not highlight, come on eraser, there we go. I'm going to erase that y and I'm going to replace it with negative 3x. So 4x plus negative 3x on the left is just x, and the 15, nothing happens, and hey, I don't have to do anything else. I'm all set. My answer is C, 15. Which of the following equations is the most appropriate linear model for the data shown in the scatter plot? I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this one so you can really get a good look at this. This is a case where the multiple choice is your friend. Do you see how they all have 1.9 or negative 1.9, some variant of 1.9, and then either a positive or negative 10.1? So this is a good idea for most SAT questions. Look at your answers first if it's multiple choice to give you an idea of where to go. They can help you out a lot and also speed up the process. Because if I didn't look at this, I might try to go, okay, where exactly is that going to hit? Is that going to hit below the 10? Is it going to hit above the 10? What's my y-intercept? Oh, what should, no. But because I looked down here, I know what the numbers are. I don't have to worry about calculating them. So the two big things, this is not really a drawn out math. You are not going to have to use your y equals mx plus b and figure that out. You don't have to do that. You do need to know what these represent, and that's it. This represents the y-intercept. This represents the slope. So what's my y-intercept? It's where it crosses the y-axis. Is it crossing at positive 10.1 or negative 10.1? If we're above 0, we're heading toward the positive. This is positive 10.1. So already I know it's either B or D because of the only two that have that positive 10.1 as the y-intercept. So what's the other variable here? The slope. B has a negative slope. D has a positive slope. So does this line have a negative slope or a positive slope? If you're looking at a x-axis, then your positive slopes are going to be the ones that are over here. They're going this way from between your vertical and your horizontal. They're going that way. Those are your positive slopes. Your negative slopes are the ones on this side. They're angling down. If you're going from left to right, they're going down. And they go from the horizontal, they're going down. So this is a negative slope. If you forget those facts about positive or negative slope, you can always take a couple of points on this graph and, see what's going on. Like example, I could say, okay, like this point, I don't want to note this point, and I'd say, okay, there's a point that's, I think is on that line. And the way you do slope is change in y over change in x, also called rise over run. How far are we going up and down over how far are we going left and right? So to get from this point to that point, I am going up or down. I'm going down 5, and I'm going to the right 3. So negative 5 over 3. That is a negative slope. So I know my answer is B because that is a negative slope. Okay, on to number 12, and we have another graph here. The graph of y equals f of x is shown where the function f is defined by f of x equals ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, and a, b, c, and d are constants. For how many values of x does f of x equal 0? All that information at the top is kind of extraneous and unnecessary. This is all that really matters, that and this graph. That other stuff above it, you're not going to really need. For how many values of x does f of x equal 0? If you have a graph, f of x equals 0 on the x-axis. More specifically, where does this function cross the x-axis? They're saying, what value of x do I plug into this where I get 0? Where the y is 0. Where is y 0? On the x-axis. So that's it. That's all they're asking is, how many times does this thing touch or cross the x-axis? 1, 2, 3. Done. There's your answer. C, 3. 13. Vivian bought party hats and cupcakes for $71. Each package of party hats cost $3. Each cupcake cost $1. I don't know where she's buying those cupcakes. That's pretty cheap where I'm at. If Vivian bought 10 packages of party hats, how many cupcakes did she buy? All right, so for grand total, she spent $71. We know she bought 10 packages of party hats, and each party hat cost $3. Each cupcake cost $1 each. So I'm just going to say X cupcakes, and we don't have to multiply it by anything because each one is $1. So I'm multiplying that by 1. I don't need to write it. So she spent $30 on the party hats. And to solve for x, I need to subtract 30 from both sides. X is equal to 41. She bought 41 cupcakes. Number 14. Z squared plus 10z minus 24 equals 0. What is one of the solutions to the given equation? They're wanting you to factor this. When we are factoring, we are going to look at what two numbers multiply to get our final term, but add to get that middle number. So it is what two numbers multiply to get negative 24, but add to get a positive 10. Since it's multiplying to a negative, one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So when I write out my factors of 24, I need to take that into consideration. So it could be negative 1 times 24, 1 times negative 24, 2 times negative 12, negative 2 times 12, 3 times negative 3 times 8, 3 times negative 8, and let's see, 4 times negative 6, and negative 4 times positive 6. Is that everything? Yes, that's everything. Right, now if I add these pairs of numbers together, which two are going to get me 10? If I go through, I will discover that negative 2 plus 12 equals 10. So that's my answer, my two numbers, negative 2 and 12. So when I factor this, it's going to be z minus 2 times z plus 12. Zoom out a little bit. And since that is equal to 0, then we need to set each of those separately equal to 0. So on this side, z minus 2 equals 0. Z is going to equal 2. On this side, z plus 12 equals 0. Z is equal to negative 12. Either of those is a good answer. On to number 15. Bacteria are growing in a liquid growth medium. There were 300,000 cells per milliliter during an initial observation. The number of cells per milliliter doubles every 3 hours. How many cells per milliliter will there be 15 hours after the initial observation? This one is just about being very careful with your multiplying and making sure you are understanding this problem exactly. So we're starting with 300,000. It doubles every 3 hours. So it's going to double once to get to 3 hours, then double again when we get to 6, double again to 9, again to 12, and again to 15. And that's the answer we want. So you either need to have 300,000 in your calculator and hit times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 to get your answer. Or if if you like doing your math written it out, you could just double this. 300,000 becomes 600, then to 1,200,000, then to 2,400,000, then 4,800,000, then 9,600,000. And that's our answer. D, 9,600,000. So it's just about being careful, very careful with how many times you enter that times 2. On to 16. Which expression is equivalent to 6x to the 8th y squared plus 12x squared y squared? They're wanting you to find the greatest common factor. So for this one, because we have variables and we have numbers, we need to take both of those into consideration. First, is there a greatest common factor with 6 and 12? Yes, it is 6. I bring out a 6, and it leaves behind a 1 and a 2, because 6 goes into 6 one time and into 12 two times. Next, what's the greatest common factor of x to the 8th and x squared? It's always going to be the smaller of the two. So in this case, x squared. That comes out. X squared comes out. When I take x squared out of x to the 8th, we just subtract those exponents. 8 minus 2 leaves x to the 6th. And over here, I've taken out all the x's, so there's no x's left. On to the y's. Y squared and y squared. Hey, they're both the same. Y squared can come out. And that leaves no y squareds behind there and no y squareds behind there as well. So it's just a plus, and I don't have to have that 1. So it is just 6x squared y squared times x to the 6th plus 2. So my answer is C. Number 17. A neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park and a 35-hectare residential area. The total number of trees in the neighborhood is 3,934. The equation 2x plus 35y equals 3,934 represents a situation. Which of the following is the best interpretation of x in this context? Well, look at our numbers that are corresponding. We have a 2, a 35, and 3,934. And in the equation, we have the same thing. We have 2, 35, and 3,934. So we know that 3,934 is the number of trees. So I know we're adding these together to get the total number of trees. Saying 2 hectares there, 35 hectares there. So each of these must represent the number of trees in that area. So since this is 2 times this unknown thing is how many trees are in this area, we can assume that x would be how many trees are in each hectare on average, since I'm multiplying it by 2 to get the total number of trees in that park. So my answer then would just be A, the average number of trees per hectare in the park. On to 18, we have a graph here. The graph shows the relationship between the number of shares of stock from company A, that's on the x-axis, and the number of shares of stock from company B, on the y-axis, that Simone can purchase. Which equation could represent this relationship? So this is a line. They're asking us for the equation of this line. Now you're going to see pretty quickly that none of these are going to match exactly what we're going to get. So we're going to have to do a little manipulation. Just don't want you to think when you get this first equation like, oh no, I've done something wrong. They're being a little tricky here. Okay, so when I'm doing a line in y equals mx plus b, I'm looking for the y-intercept and the slope. Y-intercept is pretty straightforward. I look right here. It's crossing the y-axis at 40. So I know 40 is my y-intercept. Now for my slope, I'm going to pick 2 points. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can really see this. And I'm going to pick that point right there and that point right there. So I'm going from 0, 40. And then this point over here is going to be, is that 15, 30. So change in y over change in x, rise over run. To go from this to there, I'm going down 10 and then go to the right. I went too far there on my little, boop, there we go. I'm going to the right 15. My change in y is negative 10. I'm going down 10. My change in x is 15. I'm going to the right 15. Negative 10 over negative 15. I can simplify that fraction to negative 2 over 3. So go back over here. I'm going to erase this. So I know now that my slope is negative 2/3 x. And you're like, woohoo, I got my equation. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 40. And oh no, it is not a choice. What have I done wrong? You haven't done anything wrong. They're being tricky. So first things first, I'm looking over here and we've got two of them. The x's and y's are on the same side. And two of them, the y's are by themselves. Now, I already have the y by itself, and it's negative 2/3 x plus 40. That does not match either of these two. So they are out. They're gone. Now, both of the other ones, the x's and y's are on the same side, and they aren't the same numbers. But I'm going to try to get to those numbers. First, I'm going to move that x over here so that it's in that x and y on the same side, that standard form. So to do that, I need to add 2/3 x to both sides, because that's counteracting that negative 2/3. So I have 2/3 x plus y equals 40. Now, both of these have it as equals 480. How would I get from 40 to 480? 480 divided by 40 is 12. So if I multiplied 40 by 12, I would get 480. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 12 and see what I get. Okay, our first one here, 12 times 2/3 is 8. And x just comes along for the ride. 12 times y is 12y. 12 times 40 is 480. So 8x plus 12y equals 480, and that is B. Got my answer. On to 19. Circle A has a radius of 3n, and circle B has a radius of 129n, where n is a positive constant. The area of circle B is how many times the area of circle A? A couple ways you can look at this. First, I have this circle. It has a radius of 3n. And I have this other circle, I am not drawing that to scale, has a radius of 129n. Because you have your calculator, knowing a shortcut here isn't the most critical thing, but there is a shortcut. I'm going to show it to you after I show you the long way. So first, we want to find the area of both of them. We say pi r squared is the area. Here we have 3n. So 3n is my radius, so it's going to be pi times 3n squared. That squared goes outside. Be careful of that. It is not 3n squared, okay? It is 3n squared. That is critical, and that's an easy way to get this wrong. So we have pi times 3n squared is 3n times 3n, or 9n squared. Same thing over here. We have pi times our radius, 129n squared. So what's 129 times 129? 16,641 n squared times pi. So I want to know how many times bigger is this circle. Since I want to know how many times bigger, I'm going to be dividing. So I have 16,641 n squared times pi divided by 9 n squared times pi. Those n squareds cancel out. Those pi's cancel out. I'm left with 16,641 divided by 9. And when I do that, I get 1,849. The shortcut way to do this is to look at these, the 3 and the 129, and to realize that those n's are kind of irrelevant because they're going to become n squareds in both of them, and they're going to cancel out. And you go, how many times bigger is 129 than 3? This is helpful if you don't have a calculator, if you come across this kind of problem when you don't have one. It's a little easier to do the math. So 3 goes into 129 43 times. And you're okay, because I'm going to be squaring it. What is 43 times 43? And it gets you to 1,849. Again, if you're using a calculator, there's no real difference in the amount of time it takes to do that. If you're doing it, if you're having to do this kind of problem longhand on paper, it will save you some time to get that realization. You can just find the difference between those lengths and then square it to get the difference in the areas. Okay, on to 20. The frequency table summarizes the 57 data values in a data set. What is the maximum data value in the data set? So we're just looking here at the data value. The frequency doesn't matter in this case. as long as there is a value for it. What's the biggest number? They're just asking you what's the biggest number in that column, and it's 14. And let's make sure it is included. There is at least something in the frequency. It's just a double check. But yeah, 6, it is there. So 14 is the biggest number. That's it. That's all you need the frequency for, is just to double check and make sure they didn't try to be sneaky and put a 0 there and like, oh, it's not actually part of the data values. But no, 14, done. And honestly, this would kind of throw me if I was looking at it, because it's number 20. We're getting towards the end. They should be harder questions, and that's a softball question. And so, yeah, that can be a little confusing. Go like, am I missing something? No, it's just 14. Number 21, a circle in the xy plane has a diameter with endpoints 2, 4, and 2, 14. An equation of this circle is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals r squared, where r is a positive constant. What is the value of r? Now, the one thing that's really going to help you is just knowing that this is the standard equation of a circle. That's how you do it. In this format, this number right here is your x value of the center, but use the opposite. And this right here is the y value of the center of this circle, but you use the opposite. And r squared, it means the radius squared. That is the standard formula of a circle. That's what they're giving you. So you don't have to, you really use this so much if you don't want to. And it's making it look more complicated than it is. Like, oh my God, I have to figure this out and solve and do all this math. And nope. They're really just testing you to know that that means the radius. So they're asking you, what's the radius of this circle? So 2 ways to do that. You can just look at these 2. You don't even have to worry with this if you don't want to. You can look at that it has a diameter on this plane. I'm not drawing this to scale. That there's a point here at 2, 4, and there's a point up here at 2, 14, and that is the diameter of this circle. Well, how far apart are these 2 points? It's a straight line up and down. We don't have to do any really fancy math. I'm going from 4 up to 14. How far is that? That's 10. I'm going up 10. So the diameter is 10. A radius is half the diameter. So the radius is 5. That's it. That's done. That's the easiest way. That's the way I would recommend. The other way you can look at this is say, okay, knowing the equation of the circle here, I know that the center is at 2, 9. What is the distance from that center to either of these points? And that would give me the radius. That works too. But honestly, I think that's the easiest way. Those 2 points are 10 apart. That's the diameter. Radius is half the diameter, so it's 5. R is 5. On to 22. The measure of angle R is 2 pi radians. The measure of angle T is 5 pi 12 radians greater than the measure of angle R. What is the measure of angle T in degrees? 2 things they're testing you here, your ability to add fractions and to know how to convert radians to degrees. All right, so 2 pi over 3 radians, and angle T is 5 pi over 12 radians greater than, so we're going to be adding 5 pi over 12. Ignoring that there's a pi there, this really is just, make them have common denominators and then add. To get 3 to have a denominator, 2 pi over 3 to have a denominator of 12, we're going to need to multiply it by 4 over 4. So on top, that gives me 8 pi, and on the bottom I have my 12. So now I can add those. So 2 pi over 3 becomes 8 pi over 12. I add those together. 8 pi plus 5 pi is 13 pi over 12. So that's my first part done. Now they want to know, what is this angle in degrees? Okay, so 13 pi over 12, I need to convert that to degrees. To convert to degrees, you multiply by 180 over pi. To get from degrees to radians, you multiply by pi over 180. If you're having a hard time remembering which one's which, if you are starting in radians, 9 times out of 10, there's a pi involved. If you're in degrees, there's like never a pi involved. It's just degrees. I'm sure somewhere out there, someone's going to go, there's a problem I had where there's, I know. I'm talking as a general rule. There's not going to be a pi when you're talking about degrees. You're only going to see that 99 times out of 100 in radians. So if you're trying to get from radians to degrees, you want to put the pi where it will cancel out. So here you want the pi to be on the bottom so that they're going to cancel out and be gone. That's what helps me to remember whether it's 180 over pi or pi over 180. Because if you multiplied this thing by the other way around, if you put the pi on top over 180, you're going to get pi squared degrees. Oh, no, we've done something wrong. So 180 over pi. Canceling here is going to be your friend. Pi's cancel out. And 12 does go into 180. So 12 goes into 12 one time, and 12 goes into 180 15 times. And so then we can just multiply because the pi's are gone. And we just have 13 times 15 on top. And that's 195 degrees, which is C, my answer. On to 23. A certain town has an area of 4.36 square miles. What is the area in square yards of this town? And they're giving you that 1 mile is 1,760 yards. So a square mile is a square that is a mile by a mile. 1 mile by 1 mile. So what are the square yards? Well, if it's 1 mile on each side, that means it's 1,760 yards on this side and 1,760 yards on that side. This is where our calculator is our friend in making this a lot easier and quicker. So how many square yards are in 1 square mile? We multiply 1,760 by 1,760, and we get 3,097,600. And then we have 4.36 square miles, so we multiply this number times 4.36, and we're going to get 13,505,536, which is D. If you don't have a calculator and you come across a problem like this is one of those cases where looking at the answers is a big help. If you'll notice, each of them is exponentially greater. It's like 10 times or more greater than the one below it. We've got 100,000, 100,000, and then 10 million. So there's this huge jump between these numbers. So if you didn't have a calculator, you would just estimate and you would get in the right ballpark. So in this, I might say round that and say it's 2,000 yards on each side, approximately. Multiplying those, you multiply 2 times 2 is 4, and then how many zeros do you have? 6 zeros. That's the quick way to multiply numbers that have a ton of zeros. So 4 million. And then it's approximately 4 square miles. So if I multiply by 4, I'm going to get 16 million. The only number here that's even close is 13.5 million. So I know that's my answer. So that's the, non-calculator way to get that. That's another example of how those answers can really help you out. On to number 24. For line H, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y. Line K is the result of translating line H down 5 units in the xy plane. What is the x-intercept of line K? So we need to find a couple things going on here. My way that I would find the equation of this line, find its y-intercept, and go from there. So I have my x values and I have my y values. So my first line, my y equals mx plus b. I want to know my slope and my y-intercept. So my slope, my change in y, I am going up 30 to get from 130 to 160. And I'm going up 5 to get from 18 to 23. So 30 over 5, or 6. This line has a slope of 6. Now I need to find my y-intercept. I'm going to take any one of these points. I'm going to use the smallest one, 18 and 130, and plug them in here for that x and y value. So my x is 18 and my y is 130. Erase that. So 130 is equal to 6 times 18 is 108. Plus b, then I subtract 108 from both sides, and I get that b is equal to 22. So the equation of that line is y equals 6x plus 22. Now, when we say translate a line 5 units down, Nothing is happening to that slope. It's just sliding down. So if the y-intercept is 22, like we're up here at 22, and I go 5 units down, where am I going to be at? 22 minus 5, or 17. So the slope of the line K is still the same, and the y-intercept is going to be 17. So the the equation of that line is going to be y equals 6x plus 17. Again, this is line K. This over here is line H. Okay. So 6x plus 17. What is the x-intercept of line K? X-intercept, be very careful of that, because y-intercept is what we find all the time. So we go like, oh, the y-intercept, okay. X-intercept. X-intercept is where y is 0. So I need to plug 0 in for y and then solve for x. So if y is 0, 6x plus 17, I need to subtract 17 from both sides. I get negative 17 equals 6x. To get x by itself, I need to undo that x being multiplied by 6 by dividing by 6. So x is going to be equal to negative 17 sixths. That's not hard to say at all. So my answer is D, negative 17 sixths and 0. Number 25. In the xy plane, the graph of the equation y equals negative x squared plus 9x minus 100 intersects the line y equals c at exactly 1 point. What is the value of c? This is not super easy, but there is something that if you realize it, it's going to make it way easier. Okay, first off, negative x squared. Negative x squared, this is a parabola. Negative means it's going upside down. It's opening down. So I don't know where it is yet, but I know this about it. That negative x squared, it's a parabola, it's opening down. Now there's a line that's going to intersect it at 1 point. Where can a line intersect this at 1 point? Y equals c. Y equals c is a horizontal line because it's wherever y is the same. It'll be a horizontal line. Where on this parabola can a horizontal line go through it and only intersect it at 1 point? Ta-da! At the vertex. That's it. It's the only place a horizontal line can only touch it at 1 point. So I need to find the line that goes through the vertex. So that's what they're asking is what is this y value at the vertex? To find the vertex of a parabola, I think the easiest way is to use the equation for the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is that line that goes straight down the middle. And the way that you find that is x equals negative b over 2a, where that a and b are coming from that quadratic. When we do like ax squared plus bx plus c, that's what we're talking about. The a is the number in front of the x squared, the b is the number in front of the x, and the c is the number that's all by its lonesome. So for this negative x squared plus 9x minus 100, my b is 9, so negative b over 2 times a. My a is negative 1, so 2 times negative 1. So x equals negative 9 over 2 times negative 1, or negative 2. So my x is going to equal 9 halves because it's negative 9 over negative 2. So x is equal to 9 halves. All right, now here comes some less than fun math, but the SAT is what we signed up for. So if x equals 9 halves, what's y at that point? We need to take this equation, y equals negative x squared plus 9x minus 100, and we need to put 9 halves in for x. So we have first negative 9 halves squared plus 9 times 9 halves minus, I wrote 10 there, sorry, minus 100. Okay, so 9 halves squared is 9 halves times 9 halves, or 9 times 9 on top, 81. 2 times 2 on bottom, 4. So negative 81 fourths plus 9 times 9 halves, you multiply it like it's 9 times 1. 9 times 9 on top, 81. 1 times 2 on the bottom, 81 halves minus 100. Oh, fractions. You never get away from them, do you? All right, so our common denominator here would be 4. We need all of them to have a common denominator of 4. So 81 halves, to get that into fourths, I need to multiply by 2 over 2. So bring down that negative 81 fourths. 81 halves times 2 over 2 is going to be 162 over 2. Excuse me, over 4. Sorry about that. And then 100, to get it to be fourths, I need to multiply by 4 over 4. Yay! So I get 400 fourths. All right, so this is negative 81 fourths plus 162 fourths minus 400 fourths. So you can use your calculator to have negative 81 plus 162 minus 400. And when you do all that math, you are going to get negative 319. Don't forget that is still fourths. So negative 319 fourths. And lo and behold, there it is. Negative 319 fourths. That one's a doozy. I'm not gonna lie. That one takes some doing, but that is our answer. All right. Used so much space, it rolled over into our 26. Okay, this one, I'll admit, when I first read it, I went, what on earth? it's unusual. 2x plus 3y equals 7. And 10x plus 15y equals 35. For each real number r, which of the following points lies on the graph of each equation in the xy plane for the given system? And if your eyes just glazed over, I don't blame you. Now me, when I first looked at that, I go, wait a minute. If I have a system of equations, that's 2 lines. Generally, when we have 2 lines, they cross. And they have a solution, which is 1 point. Or they're parallel, and they have no solutions. Those are the most common ones. But usually in algebra, when we're talking about systems of equations like this, they almost always are going to be 2 lines crossing, and they want us to find the solution. And here they're telling us the solution is in variable form for every real number. Like, what? So I looked at these lines a little closer, and that's when you notice they're being tricky. These are the same line. It's the same line twice. 2x plus 3y equals 7. And 10x plus 15y equals 35. How do you get from 2x to 10x? You multiply by 5. How do you get from 3y to 15y? You multiply by 5. How do you get from 7 to 35? You multiply by 5. If you can do that, if you can multiply each one of these by the same number and get this other one, it's the same line. Okay? That's point 1. You have to realize that they are the same line. Okay, so next one. They wanting you to know, they want you to find out which of these represents all the points that are on this line. Okay, so what they want you to do is to take this equation. I'm going to forget about this one because they're the same line. First, solve for x, and second, solve for y. So what happens if I solve for x? I'm going to do that over here. 2x plus 3y equals 7. To solve for x, I need to get it by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides, and I get 2x equals negative 3y plus 7. Then I need to get rid of that 2, so I'm going to divide everything by 2, and I get x equals negative 3 halves y plus 7 halves. Okay? Other side, I'm going to solve for y. So here I have 2x plus 3y equals 7. To solve for y, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I have 3y equals negative 2x plus 7. Then I'm going to divide everything by 3 to get rid of that 3 in front of the y. And I get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 7/3. Now here's where it gets a little tricky and a little conceptual. All right, first, look at my two final solutions that I got here. Do you see anything over here that's similar to that? First one, I don't see anything that's similar to what I just got. Next, I have a negative 3r over 2 plus 7 over 2. Like, that's very close to this right here. So this is a possibility. Okay. Next one, 2r cubed plus 7 cubed. I'm sorry, 2r over 3 plus 7 over 3. That's very close to this, but not exactly. It's negative in mine. So I don't think that's right, but because this is a little oddball, I'm going to look at it a little closer and see what's going on. And then this one, negative 3r over 2 plus 7 over 2, it's the same there again. Now, if I'm looking this, and this is an unusual problem, it's very conceptual again, now I'm zeroing in on B and D because they're both the same. They're just reversed, and they both match this one that I just got. So already I'm thinking, okay, so this being a positive and this being a negative, that means something. This one is out. C is out. So now I'm just going to look at B and D. And what are these actually saying? They're saying if I have a number, any number, R, this one is saying if my Y value is R, then my X value would be negative 3R over 2 plus 7 over 2. Look at this equation right here. This is saying that for every value of y, x is equal to negative 3 halves times the y plus 7 halves. What would happen if I replace that y with an r? What would my coordinates be for a point of r? R would be my y value. So this would be r. And what happens? What would my x value be? My x value is negative 3 halves times r plus 7 halves. And looky there. And that r, I should be very clear on that. This little r right there, this r, I'm writing it out to the side. That is not under the equation. It is out to the side. So it can be here, or you can put it up here with the 3. Either way is fine. So negative 3 halves r plus 7 halves would be the x, and r is the y. This is an oddball problem. It just is. So I hope that made sense. Again, you're saying if I pick a number, any number, and I'm calling that number r, and r is my y value, what would the x be? I plug it in, and that's what x would be. X would be negative 3 halves times that random r number plus 7 halves. So any number on this line can be represented as negative 3 times my whatever y value over 2 plus 7 over 2, and then the y value is just that same y value. Again, that's an oddball question, and I think it's going to trip up a lot of people. I just do. Number 27, the perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. Before I go any further, I am already like, okay, equilateral triangle, all 3 sides are the same. So if the whole thing is 624, I'm going to divide that by 3. So each side is 208. I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. Okay, moving on. The height of this triangle is k, it's my height, k square root of 3 centimeters, where k is a constant. What is the value of k? This is testing that you know you're about your 30, 60, 90 triangles, and also that you know that all the angles in an equilateral triangle are 60 degrees. So what they're doing is they're setting up a 30, 60, 90 triangle right here. I'm just going to draw it again out to the side. So this is 60. There's my right angle. There's my 30. They're telling you this is k square root of 3, and we know this side is 208. Now, 2 ways you can get this bottom side here. One, you can say, all right, this is coming down. It's dividing this in 2. So these are 2 equal sides there. 208 divided by 2 is 104. You also can just get that from knowing that your 30, 60, 90 triangles are in the form of x, 2x, and x square root of 3. So if this is 2x, 208, then this bottom part x, I must divide by 2 and get 104. Then, as we say here, 2x, x square root of 3. Once I have that x on the bottom, I multiply it by the square root of 3 and get that other side. So here this side would be 104 times the square root of 3. So k is equal to 104. And congratulations, you made it to the end of part 2 in module 1 of the digital SAT practice test. I hope you enjoyed that today. If it was helpful, useful in any way, please like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you have a great day. See you later. Bye.